Hi there, my name is Amalia. Welcome to my channel. In October, I really got into mystery thrillers, so I read a couple of Ruth Ware books. I was aware of her from BookTube, and then I was at the point where I read 3 of her books already, and I was like, well, she has 5 books out, so let me just pick them all up. So I finally read all 5 of them, and I decided to do a video dedicated to her books. And in this video, I'm gonna discuss these books, why I think that Ruth Ware's books are a bit special, and also I'm gonna rank her books from least favorite to most favorite. But before we get into the books, I just wanna mention briefly what I think is special about Ruth Ware and why I think her books are so popular. For once, like most mystery thrillers, they're really fast-paced, easy to read, and what I think really makes her special is that she always has these amazing premises and these great settings. All of her books are like these closed circle mysteries, where in this isolated setting, there's always a certain number of suspects. And there's always a limited number of characters as well in her book. And it's very Agatha Christie inspired, I guess. Her books are in order of publication. So the first one came out in 2015 and it is In a Dark, Dark Wood. Then each year, consequently, we have The Woman in Cabin 10, The Lying Game, The Death of Mrs Westaway, and The Turn of the Key, which came out this year. Regarding the rating of these books, I mean, I don't have specific ratings apart from 1 5-star. I think most of these books hover on the 3.5 mark. So my least favorite Ruth Ware book is The Death of Mrs Westaway. Now this may come as a shock to you if you're into Ruth Ware books, because this was a pretty popular book last year when it came out. It's also the second best rated book of hers on Goodreads. But for me, I didn't really enjoy it, and I had some very specific things I didn't enjoy in this one. But let's start with the premise. We meet our main protagonist, a young girl who is alone in the world. Her mother died, and you can really feel how lonely she is because of it. Her mother was kind of the center of her universe. It was her whole family. They were really close to each other. So after her death, she has to kind of scrape by. She cannot continue schooling because she doesn't have any money. So she has to take over her mother's business, which is reading tarot cards in a booth on the pier. She doesn't really believe in tarot cards. She just picked up this trade from her mother, but she's kind of good at it. Though it is the winter time where we begin our story and there's not a lot of customers. So there's also some loan sharks after her in the beginning. So we kind of feel that she's like pressed up against the corner somehow in life, and she doesn't have the freedom to do what she wants because she can barely afford to pay her rent. And then suddenly she receives this letter where it says she's gonna receive a great inheritance. And then she feels like, what? This must be a mistake because I don't have any family. But because she's so pressed for money, she decides to just go with the flow and go see what this is all about. So this is where we start. She goes off to this great house where she meets her family, and then the mystery unfolds from there. Ruth Ware draws from horror tropes in this one, like in many of her books. So we have the creepy house, we have the creepier housekeeper, we have the mysterious family, we have some mysterious supernatural things happening in the house. So at times you almost feel like, is this a horror book? Or is something really gruesome about to happen? So there's always this ominous feel. And there's also the room in the attic. So it's truly creepy in that sense. I really enjoyed all of these elements in the book. But where this book failed me is the fleshing out of the characters. So we meet all these family members and we don't really, I couldn't really differentiate between them. They were all kind of like lumped together. And I really appreciate great characters in a book. And I just didn't feel that this one had it. And then another thing I didn't like it's that it is a bit too long. Not much really happens until the final twist, which kind of really left me what? There's a lot of repetition. So what I feel is that the author didn't really nail it in holding my attention and keeping up the suspense throughout the book. So if it weren't for those horror tropes in there, I feel that I would have even stopped guessing, or I would have even stopped being creeped out, and then it really would have been like a flat no from me on this book. I think that even though there are some back and forths between present and past through some letters, I just didn't feel that the characters were fleshed out, and I would have wanted to know more from the creepy housekeeper's perspective, for example, and we just didn't get it. So I think that's why this is my least favorite Ruth Ware. Did you like it? I mean, last year when this came out, I really saw a lot of great reviews on BookTube, but I guess it's just not for me. Now let's move on to the next one. The next book on this list is The Lying Game. This is about a group of friends. These girls were in boarding school together when they were 16-year-olds, something like that. And there in this boarding school, they played this game called the Lying Game. And they gave each other points based on who told the best lie and who made people believe in their lies the best. So it's kind of a creepy game, and it's kind of, you know, they messed with people in like a mean girl type of way. So they weren't really liked at school. At some point during that school year, a teacher dies, and this teacher is actually one of the girls' father. Now, surrounding this teacher's death, there were other things happening at school, and because of those things, the girls get expelled. So now fast forward in time, today one of those girls sends out a message to everyone that, hi, I need your help, please come. And of course they all rush back. So this is the case of what happened in the past. Let's figure it out, because we're kind of hiding, all of us are hiding from it. We don't want to know, but we're kind of in this situation where I guess we have to find out. So I love that in this one, you have these moments where with flashbacks in time from when they were young, and you actually get a more feel and depth to these people and the setting and the plot. So I really like that part. I think it's the best way to get into the story, especially if it's about something which happened in the past, which was also the case of the Death of Mrs Westaway. I really like the characters as well. I felt that they were all fleshed out in a way better than the characters in the Death of Mrs Westaway. What I did not enjoy about this book is that it was too long. I felt it again dragged out like the Death of Mrs Westaway. And what I didn't like is that because we follow one of the characters' point of view, we get all these side plots of her family and her situation, which really doesn't have anything to do with the book. So I didn't understand why it was in there. Also, because of this, I felt that I kind of lost that suspenseful momentum which a book like this needs to have throughout, because this side plot kind of took you out of the story and made you focus on something else, maybe less spooky. I don't know. It felt in a way a bit domestic, whereas the main plot line had nothing to do with domestic mystery, you know? The next one I want to talk about is In a Dark, Dark Wood. I really like the setting of this one. It is set around autumn/winter time, and it is set in this cabin in the woods, so a very remote cabin in the woods. So in this one we follow our main protagonist, Nora, who's a writer, and you get a sense that she's a bit isolated in the world. She lives in her apartment, she does her work from home, she goes out on these long runs, but she's not really part of society. I didn't get a feel that she had, I mean, I read this like last month, but what I remember is that she didn't really have a lot of friends, close connection to people, that's what I'm saying. So we start out by her receiving an email where she is invited to this hen do. Now this comes as a surprise to Nora, because this is a hen do to one of her best friends from high school, Claire. But she hasn't seen Claire since high school. So she's kind of curious as to why she invited to this hen do. But she decides to accept the invitation. When we get there, It's really this creepy house where with these really large windows exposed you, so you almost feel like you're out in the elements. They all go to this Hindu. There's like 5 people, and then throughout this weekend something happens and someone dies. And then we go back and forth in time because Nora forgets what happened and she's trying to piece it all together. I really liked how it was set up. I just wish, and one of the biggest negatives for me in this book was that we didn't get more flashbacks to the past, because that would have made the twist in the end a bit more believable, which I didn't feel it was. It lacked foreshadowing, I would say. Basically, there wasn't enough build-up, in my opinion, to make the end seem believable. So I think that's why this is not higher up on my list, even though I think out of all of her books, this had the most interesting setting for me personally. My second favorite Ruth Ware book is The Woman in Cabin 10. In this one, we follow a journalist who gets the assignment of a lifetime. So she works for this travel magazine, and she's always envious of her boss because she goes on these amazing press trips all over the world. But her boss cannot go to this particular event she's invited to, so she sends Lo instead. And this is a trip on a luxury yacht with very few cabins on the North Sea. So at the beginning of this novel, something happens. On this happening, kind of the whole story hinges in a way, because this sets Lo up for what's happening next. This book builds on mystery thriller tropes like lack of sleep, a lot of alcohol drink by a woman, particularly in this one. There's always something with mystery thrillers and women drinking alcohol, and the unreliable narrator people seem to be a bit tired of, I guess. But this is what this one builds on. So she gets on this boat and she's already tired from lack of sleep. And she tries to cope with what happened before the boat by drinking copious amounts of alcohol. But then she witnesses a person falling overboard. So, of course, she raises the alarm. She tells everyone that she witnessed something and how horrible it is and what happened. She tries to figure it out. But when they do a head count on the boat, no one is missing. So no one actually believes her, even though they try to figure it out as well. But they kind of go like, well, no one's missing, so you must have hallucinated. You were clearly drinking. So the story goes from there. She's not quitting. She will definitely figure out what happened. So I really liked this setting as well in this book. And I felt that we really had a good grasp on the main characters. But because this is set on the boat with a set number of characters, I feel that there were a lot of people around and I really didn't get a grasp of them. So they kind of all blended together. Apart from 1 or 2, I guess, maybe the main ones. I don't know. I just feel that I didn't get a good sense of the rest of the people. And then the ending of this one felt pretty unbelievable to me. I just think the twist at the end took the story to a completely different path I wasn't expecting and I wasn't believing in a way. So I think that made the story a bit less exciting and much less believable. What I really enjoyed in this one is the escalating tension. You really feel how the main character hasn't slept, how hungover she is on top of hungover on top of hungover. I mean, seriously, if it was me, I would have dropped dead, or not dead. I would have knocked myself out way before I would have seen what she saw. But I felt the tension all the way through this one, and that's why I think this is so high up on my list. And then the last book on this list, and my favorite Ruth Ware book, is her last book, The Turn of the Key. I don't know if this is so because I listened to it on Audible, but I think listening to a mystery thriller is really heightens the creep factor of the book. I really love the setting as well. So this is about the nanny who is in prison and she's writing to a lawyer. So we kind of find out what happened and why she's in prison. So basically she accepted this really well-paid position in a remote house in Scotland where she's to be nanny for some children. Now she goes there and this house she has to live in is actually a smart house. So they took this old Victorian abandoned house and they completely modernized it. Or not completely. Some parts of it are modern and some parts of it are left the way it is. But this has been turned into a smart house. So everything is accessed via phone or via these panels on the wall. And we get the feeling from the beginning that how our main character is not comfortable because also there are cameras everywhere. So she feels that she doesn't have any privacy at all. So we don't have the most likable main character because, you know, like I can imagine how a nanny is. I mean, she's supposed to like children and love children, but we're also people and children cry, so I guess you get annoyed. So she really tries to put her best foot forward and she's trying to show her best self. But she's at the same time telling us, but listen, I'm a human being. So in that way, she's really relatable. And again, in this one, Ruth Ware draws from great horror tropes. So we have the creepy house, we have creaky noises coming from the attic, we have the weird and horroristic dolls creeping up, we have the handsome handyman. So I feel in this sense, there's a good tension throughout the book. We feel how the main character is unable to sleep because there's always this creak. I'm not so good as the audible narrator. Creak, creak, creak sound coming from the attic, and it really gave me the chills when I listened to it. It also didn't help that I listened to most of this at night before going to sleep, so I felt that at times I had to stop because this was just too much. I'm easily creeped out, you know. So there's this great atmosphere, this great tension all the way through. Also because the nanny is left with the children because the parents are off on business. So she's trying to figure out what's happening in this house. Is this house haunted? Is someone messing with me? There's just something going on. And then there's a big twist at happening, and then someone dies. And then, of course, she ends up in prison. She is accused of the murder. So we kind of think from what happened that she cannot be the murderer. Also because that's what she says to the lawyer through her letters, that she did not kill anyone. Now, the ending took me by surprise. I am not 100% agreeing with how this book ended. I think I understand why it ended that way, but I personally would have preferred a different ending. So I love this book because of the creepy factor. I think I loved it mostly because I listened to it on Audible. So I think listening to it gave the story another dimension. And I would definitely pick up some more mystery thrillers in audio format in the future. So the great points in this story is the unlikable main character. It is the house, which is malfunctioning. And of course, the creepy horror tropes Ruth Ware uses. I really enjoyed this one. And if you want to read a Ruth Ware book, I would definitely go with The Turn of the Key. And then maybe check out her other books as well, if you like isolated, closed circle mysteries, like this is what she does. I think she has a book coming out every year, and I'm curious to see if she will continue with this isolated, closed circle mystery trope in the future. I will definitely pick up her next book, and I really enjoyed myself reading these Ruth Ware books. I think she's really good at setting the mood, at choosing these locations for her novels, and at using this isolated closed circle mystery trope. I can see how she developed throughout these 5 books, because I feel that especially in the last one, there wasn't anything I would have changed that much, even though I didn't agree with the ending, but that's a personal choice. So she's really getting better at holding the suspense, and what I really love about it is that she is good at employing these horror tropes, which give an extra creepy, horroristic factor to her books. I think they really gave me the chills, and I have and these ones appeared in a lot of these books. I think they make me want to pick up some actual horror books, even though I'm the biggest chicken and I cannot watch horror movies for the life of me. I'm just under the blanket constantly with my hands on my ears. So I don't know if the reading experience would be different, but I really love these horrific elements in these books. But please tell me if you have read any of these books and if you enjoyed it as much as I did. I can't wait to pick up more mystery thrillers in the future. So I guess this is where I leave you now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!